beautiful summer evening, and the Johnson family was gathered in their living room, enjoying each other's company. Mr. and Mrs. Johnson were sitting on the couch, while their two children, Samantha and Michael, were playing a board game on the floor. As the night wore on, Mr. Johnson suggested they explore the attic since they hadn't done so since they moved in. The kids were excited about the idea, but Mrs. Johnson wasn't too thrilled.
Are you sure that's a good idea? It's been years since anyone's been up there, and who knows what could be lurking around.
Don't be silly. It's just an attic. There's nothing to be afraid of.
With that, they all headed up the stairs and began exploring. The attic was filled with old furniture, boxes, and other miscellaneous items. But there was one thing that caught Samantha's eye, a large antique mirror. She walked over to it and examined it closely. It was beautifully crafted, with intricate carvings and a golden frame. As she looked at her reflection, she couldn't help but feel a strange sense of unease.
Mom, Dad, come look at this.
Her parents walked over to see what she was looking at, and Mr. Johnson whistled in admiration.
That's a beautiful mirror. I wonder why it was left up here.
Maybe the previous owners didn't want it.
As they continued exploring the attic, Samantha couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about the mirror. It seemed to follow her gaze, and sometimes she could have sworn that she saw something moving inside it. That night, as they all went to bed, Samantha couldn't help but feel uneasy. She kept imagining that she could see things moving in the mirror's reflection, even though she knew it was just her imagination. The next day, Samantha was determined to figure out what was going on with the mirror. She went back up to the attic and examined it more closely. That's when she noticed something strange. The reflection in the mirror wasn't quite right. Instead of reflecting what was in front of it, the mirror showed a dark, shadowy world. Samantha watched in horror as she saw twisted, grotesque figures moving around in the reflection. She screamed and ran out of the attic, terrified. When she told her parents what she had seen, they didn't believe her. They thought she was just making things up, or that she had been watching too many scary movies. But Samantha knew what she had seen, and she was convinced that something was wrong with the mirror. Days turned into weeks, and Samantha couldn't shake the feeling that the mirror was somehow connected to the dark, shadowy world she had seen. She tried to avoid the attic and the mirror as much as possible, but sometimes she couldn't resist the urge to go back and look. One day, Samantha's parents went out for the evening, leaving her and Michael home alone. As they were playing video games in the living room, Samantha heard a strange noise coming from upstairs.
Did you hear that?
Yeah, what was it?
Samantha was hesitant, but she knew she had to investigate. She went upstairs, and as she got closer to the attic door, she could hear the noise getting louder. When she opened the door to the attic, she was greeted with a horrifying sight. The mirror was glowing with an eerie green light, and the reflection inside was more twisted and grotesque than ever before.
Samantha, what's going on?
But before she could answer, a cold gust of wind blew past them, and the mirror's frame began to shake violently. Suddenly, the mirror shattered into a million pieces, sending shards of glass flying in all directions. Samantha and Michael screamed and ran out of the attic, but they could hear strange whispers and moans following them down the stairs. They ran into the living room, where they found their parents already back home.
What's going on?
The mirror in the attic. It broke.
What do you mean it broke?
As he reached the top, he saw the shattered pieces of the mirror on the floor. But he also saw something else, a shadowy figure lurking in the corner of the room.
What the hell is that?
Suddenly, the figure began to move towards him, its limbs contorted in unnatural ways. Mr. Johnson screamed and ran down the stairs, closely followed by his family. As they reached the front door, they heard a deafening crash coming from the attic. They knew they had to get out of the house, and fast. They ran outside and huddled together in the front yard, watching as their house began to shake and tremble. Suddenly, the entire house collapsed in on itself, leaving nothing but a pile of rubble and debris. For months afterwards, the Johnson family tried to forget about what had happened. They moved to a new house, far away from the old one, and tried to start over. But Samantha could never forget about the mirror in the attic. She knew that it had been connected to the strange world she had seen, and that it had somehow been responsible for the destruction of their old house. Years went by, and Samantha grew up and started a family of her own. But she never forgot about the mirror, and the strange and terrifying events that had taken place in her childhood home. One day, she decided to go back to the ruins of their old house, to see if there was anything left of the mirror. As she sifted through the debris, she found a small piece of glass that had somehow survived the collapse. As she looked into the shard, she saw a faint reflection of the twisted world she had seen as a child. She knew that the mirror was still out there somewhere, waiting to be found by someone else. And so, she decided to keep the shard as a reminder of the terror that had once consumed her family's lives. She knew that as long as the mirror was out there, she would never be completely safe.